Thank you for joining me, Bertram Allen Mullen, or BAM, as friends call me, for another edition of Tips as an ALT. This time I'm going to talk about meeting etiquette because I've given a lot of advice in these presentations about what to do, but I haven't really talked about how to do it. Somewhat, I've talked about how to do it, but in talking about how to do it, I want to show, or I can't really show you, but explain an example of how someone used what I said and in what way that helped them. First, a little background about that story. It's just not perfect enough for me. Once again, first a little background in that story. A friend of mine who is an ALT, we'll call her Cindy, was telling me that the JTs in her school didn't like her. They would have lunch without her. For example, one time she remembered smelling Indian curry on all of them, and they were all bragging about eating together. And she remembered her first day, they invited her to this Indian restaurant, but then after that, they stopped inviting her, and they were all going together without her, and she felt left out. Sometimes she could smell the Indian curry, and it was really the smell of defeat and anger for her, because she's like, why aren't they inviting me too? And she just felt like an outcast and didn't know why or what was going on. She thought maybe they didn't like her because she was a foreigner, but that couldn't be it, because they invited her the first time, and they talked about other ALTs going to all of their lunch meetings at the Indian restaurant. But for some reason, she wasn't going to these new ones. And well, she also said they were talking about her behind her back, and she didn't know what to do. So, and her job wasn't really helping her. All they did was tell her about complaints. So who could she turn to but friends who were ALTs? And I had met her when she was training. We were training together, and we had both been teaching about a year. And but at that point, I knew a little bit about meeting etiquette, and I asked her what she was doing during uchawases. And Cindy told me that the teachers would ask her to make a lesson. And during these meetings where they were asking her to make a lesson, they would share ideas back and forth during conversations about how the lesson dynamics would go. So a teacher would talk about, like, today we're going to do a lesson involving this and that, and Cindy would say, oh, I like this and that lessons, I have a good idea, this is how this conversation would go. And then the teacher would keep talking, and then Cindy would add something while they were talking. That's sort of how these meetings would go, a lot of back and forth described. So she told me that the teachers were never happy after this, and she just didn't know why, what was going on. They just seemed bitter and angry with her in the classroom and out. They wouldn't really talk to her unless there was a meeting about a lesson. She would notice they'd talk to each other, and she'd have to track them down to have meetings. Otherwise, she didn't know what was going on during activities. The teachers wouldn't want to talk to her. She felt like Milton from that movie. Yeah, so Office Space, where she was in a corner alone. And she just wanted to hide under a blanket when she got home because she didn't know what was going on. No one liked her. She felt rightfully paranoid. And and so Cindy told me that she didn't know what she was experiencing, and I told her it was probably tatemae. They would tell her to her face the lessons were good, and give her a thumbs up, and then they'd stop talking to her because they just thought that's what she wanted to hear. They'd listen to what she had to say, and then they'd move on. The teachers were wanting to just talk about the lessons and nothing else. But then I said, what's going on during these meetings, however, is that they don't want to have a back and forth conversation. They want to tell you what to do, and then they want you to say, okay. So they're saying, I want you to do this and that. Do you understand? and then they want to hear just, yes, I understand. Daijoubu desu. Hi, wakarimasu, wakarimashita. They want to hear that. Yes, I understand. I understand. Okay, okay. And that's all. They don't want to hear, oh, I have this idea for this and that. They just want you to do this and that. And understanding this gets you through the day a lot faster. You become a track star at work. I added that if you have an idea for a lesson to share, the best way to implement the idea is in a meeting is to wait until after a JTA has finished explaining what they want you to do, and you've taken notes about what they want and their needs. Then asking something like, what do you think about adding a short game after we introduce this topic today? So students can walk around and wake up. You know, they're always falling asleep. Then we'll be able to return right to the lesson. It'll only take X amount of minutes. And knowing approximately how long what you want to do takes is important to the JTAs. They'll appreciate that you've considered time. And maybe they'll tell you to shorten it. You say this will take 20 minutes. They'll say you have 5. And so you only have 5. And the worst part is most of them aren't going to signal you when that 5 minutes is up. They'll either just cut you off or they'll expect you to know. And then if you look at a clock, they think you're bored. So you just have to kind of count in your mind. I sort of cheat by looking at other people's watches and pretend that I'm looking at them. It's a good cheat to have. If I look at my own watch, then they're going to think I'm bored. So I look at students' watches or the teacher's watch and when I say something to them. And it's a little trick. You could also say something like, oh, your lesson plan sounds really brilliant. That's amazing. Hey, when we do that, could we also try this, because you want to teach them I have been to, right? So if I could have 1 or 2 minutes, I could show them some pictures of when I went to Europe. See, I'm at the Berlin Wall, and then I was in Amsterdam and Prague, and I'd love to show the students this. I can say, I have been to the Berlin Wall, and they can repeat, I have been to the Berlin Wall. And then maybe they could try a sentence from the textbook, such as, I have been to a convenience store. I have been to the hospital. I have been to school. I have been to my club. And then it becomes part of your lesson too. How does that sound? What do you think? And you want to add these parts so that they feel like they're a part of what you're saying, and then it connects to them and their lesson. Otherwise, it's just out of the blue and they won't like it. So you have to make sense of it and have this balance of what I want to do is what you want to do, and it balances out and works together. Yeah, and they might like it. But just be sure to say this after what they've talked about, reiterated what they've said, and tell them I understand, and yeah, make sure they know that you understand what they've said. Reiteration helps the most, and that comes from Japan's culture of this Confucianism culture, where you don't know anything if the person you're speaking to is higher on the hierarchy scale. You need to learn from the person who's wiser than you. And this JT, no matter how old they are, they're wiser than you at students because they spend more time with them than you do. They really do. They see them so long, and you see them a few minutes in the week. And in some cases, like elementary school teachers, you visit them once a month or once a week or twice a week. They visit them 3 times a day sometimes, maybe more. And in high school and junior high school, you're there every day, but you're not in their same classroom every day. They tend to go. So they're wiser than you where students are concerned. They've also read the textbooks hours and hours, and they've listened to all those CDs that you hate, and they memorize them, and they praise them and think that they're the word of English. And so They feel that they know the material and the students better than you and the grammar. So if you come in like, I know everything, they're going to think that you don't know anything. So another approach is to just appreciate their knowledge and go in like, what can I learn from you? You're such a wise person. What can you teach me? And so Cindy applied all this and she quit her job, but she found another one and applied my advice with meetings at her new job in Japan. Now Cindy gets along with the JTs and even made a close friend of one at her new school. Excuse me. So in conclusion, my friend probably didn't do everything the way I said, but she tried out the main points. And I bet that she created her own strategy through my advice. And for that reason, she ended up making friends and enjoying her job in the future to come by incorporating a strategy. And having a strategy and being organized with what you're going to do is never a bad idea, I think. And I hope that that's your main takeaway from this. With that said, thank you to everyone who watched. May the words you heard be remembered as positive guidance for your future.